Let's talk about something you raised earlier, which is the constitution and the constitutional requirement for this intervention. All of these ECOWAS countries, and that's except for, I think it's Cape Verde, Burkina Faso, and Mali, would require parliamentary approval from their respective countries. But Nigeria the president has written to the Senate, and the Senate did reject that letter from the president. He can go ahead without approval. But I want to read this part of the Constitution, Prof, and I would ask you my question on that, which is Section 5 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, that says that notwithstanding the provisions of subsection 4 of this section, the president, in consultation with the National Defense Council, may deploy members of the armed forces of the Federation on a limited combat duty outside Nigeria if is satisfied that the national security is under imminent threat or danger. And that's the question, if really, when you look at the situation, are we under threat?
Hello?
Hello, Prof, I can hear you.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I was saying that you shouldn't jump Section 5.4, A and B, and go on to 5.5. Section 5.4A, as you rightly noted, requires that the president obtains the approval of the two houses sitting together in one session before we can declare war. The impression we are being given is that that is not what we are facing. The Section 5.4B focuses on the fact that before you commit Nigerian troops for any combat duty anywhere outside Nigeria, you must receive the approval of the Senate. Senate is saying it didn't reject, but it actually didn't give approval. Okay, so can the president go ahead? I think it's an impeachable offense if the president were to go ahead. But I'm also very conversant of the fact that President Buhari did exactly the same thing in 2017. And that is saying that we are a lawless country in which we are now trying to sell rules-based world to Niger. If our president were to decide that he is going to do what Buhari did in going to the Gambia. Now, Section 5.5 that you quoted was very, very clear. 5.5 makes it clear that if the president feels that we are under imminent threat. So 5.5 is saying you cannot be under attack and people wanting to take over your country, and then you are still looking for Senate that is probably running helter-skelter. You should go in as president for 7 days, and within that 7 days, you come back to seek the consent of the Senate.
I was just going to mention that part.
Yeah, Senate must give its consent within 14 days. I can ask you or any of our listeners.
Which means that the president can actually go into combat, but within 7 days of that actual combat, he then seeks the approval of the Senate, which will happen in 14 days. When you put 14 days and 7 days together, that's about 21 days. And Prof, which means that the president can actually go into combat if he wants to for 21 days before approval.
That's it. Okay.
Please go ahead.
No, what your reading is totally wrong. Please read Section 5.5 in its entirety for our listeners. So if you want me to read it, the Constitution is not far from me.
Let me get you. You are the expert here, Prof. I want to get your explanation.
Okay. What I'm trying to say is that Section 5.5 said, notwithstanding the provisions of subsection 4 of this section, the president, in consultation with the National Defense Council, may deploy members of the armed forces of the Federation on a limited combat duty outside Nigeria if he is satisfied. Satisfied that what? satisfied that the national security is under imminent threat or danger. You cannot overlook that proviso. National security is under imminent threat or danger. Are we under imminent threat or danger by going to Niger? No. If we are the one that is carrying war to go meet somebody else, and then where is the imminent threat or danger to our own national security? But if it turns out, for argument's sake, that Niger decided that it was going to attack us, which Niger is not trying to do, then we can use the opportunity of, but you cannot say there is a collective responsibility. Every sovereign nation under the Charter of the United Nations, and you are not even spoken about that at all, is entitled to immediate response if somebody is attacking you. But if it is not that somebody is attacking you and you are a collectivity and you want to gather and say we are going to attack somebody else, under Section 53 of the UN Charter, in Chapter 8 of that charter, which allows regional efforts, you must, it's a must, obtain the authorization of the United Nations. Section 54 says that you inform the United Nations. They have done that because if you listen to what they communicate when the presidents met the second time, they said, we are hereby informing the Peace and Security Council of the African Union and the United Nations United Nations. So the Secretary General would have taken that communique to the Security Council, but the Security Council will receive so many documents. In as much as you are not saying you want to go on an attack, the Security Council does not go starting to issue a resolution on what is not Prof, an issue before them.
I have very few minutes left, and I just want to ask you two questions before we run off this conversation. Number one, which is the issue of national security. Would it, because a lot of people have talked about how, look, looks like a coup is imminent in some other West African countries. If people were to say, look, if we allow this to happen, there are also elements within other militaries in ECOWAS who could see this as a green light to go ahead and do the same in their country. Will that reasoning stand as a national security threat?
It is not a national security threat to Nigeria. And it is important, in fact, something we don't have time to talk about, an area in which I am very, very passionate about and gave my inaugural lecture at Christland University on, that's interests. If we had time, we would have dissected what interests are at stake in Niger. The interest of the president who says, I am the sovereign will of Nigeria as elected, and the interest of our National Assembly that says, under the Constitution, I am to determine what, and the combination of the two of them, before even coming anywhere near talking about Nigeria's national interest, because those who gave them the authority is equally. So what is our problem about whether there is a democratic failure? If there was ever a democracy in many of these countries, many of our neighbors, it's a family business in Togo. We all know that. It's a family business in Benin Republic. We all know that. I said Benin, Cameroon. We all know that. Go all over the place. In Cote d'Ivoire, the president there changed the constitution and got himself a third term. The one in Senegal, the two that are at the forefront of we must do something. What are they doing in all those places? And then if they anything
Prof,
in any
because
of
I have very limited time, because a lot has been said about democracy in Niger and the intervention of ECOWAS. But what is the fate of President Bazoum in all of this? Because the military has threatened that they may or may not kill him. It depends on how ECOWAS proceeds. What's his fate in all of this?
Well, President Bazoum is a sitting duck, and it's unfortunate. I definitely will not support the denial of fundamental rights to anybody. But in this case, he is the bargaining chip, one of the bargaining chips that they have, because it's more than that. You saw our religious interaction with them and several other things that we don't have time to get into. If these people love Bazoum, they will continue negotiations to ensure that Bazoum is not killed. Because if Bazoum is, except if they're able to do a clean operation that takes charge of the whole of Niger in one single go, takes marine commandos, zoom in, carry Bazoum out or inside into any of the bases that are there. Short of that, it's reasonable to expect that Bazoum will be killed. And if Bazoum is killed, we have a bigger problem. And that is, how do you now negotiate return to constitutional order? You will still have to now be trying to do what you should have done in the first instance.
Wow, a lot of developments happening rapidly. Prof, I'm sure we'll have you over and over again to talk about these issues. Thank you so much for talking to us. Professor of Political Science, Babafemi Badejo.